Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome back to the channel. And it is a pretty crazy weekend because we have a London derby on our hands, Chelsea versus Arsenal. And it's been a really long time since I've done a preview. And I said, you know what? I need to have a proper preview for this game because it's just so massive. So I'm super happy to be joined by Tom from the Gooner Talk TV YouTube channel. Tom, thank you so much for joining me, especially so last minute as well. How's it going?
Yeah, no worries. It's a good time in the morning for me because I'm usually waking up to do these records early in the morning, so it fit perfectly. So no problem at all.
Perfect. So, guys, in this video, we're going to be talking obviously about Chelsea Arsenal, our expectations for the game, how we see it going down, maybe a combined 11. And yeah, so let's get right into it. Tom, how are you feeling about the match? What's your initial reaction?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good from an Arsenal perspective because, of course, sitting top of the table right now, it's a pretty alien feeling compared to it's been a long time since Arsenal have sat top of the table. You have to go back more than 10 years until Arsenal were involved in any kind of title race. It was the late 2000s, the last one Arsenal were really involved in. So yeah, it's a strange feeling. It's a welcome feeling, and it enables Arsenal to go into pretty much every game feeling like they can win it, which is a really nice thing to have. Arsenal used to have kind of this stigma that going away to big six teams was a massive challenge. Arsene Wenger had a really poor record. Unai Emery continued that, but Mikel Arteta has certainly changed the way in which Arsenal fans think about going to Stamford Bridge, going to Anfield, going to Old Trafford. And we are starting to pick up a lot more, results. We won our first game at Old Trafford away from home last season. First time since 2006 we managed that. And of course, we've managed to win the last two games at Stamford Bridge in the league as well, which is something that we weren't previously able to do either. So things are, confidence is running through us at the moment, that's for sure.
And what do you think is the reason for that? Because I'm looking at from an outside perspective of seeing Arsenal kind of struggle the past couple of years, and they've been super close to getting top four, but they just haven't been able to get it yet. And then this season, it just seems that you're absolutely dominating everything. So what do you think's been the major change from even last season to this season?
Yeah, I think it's, if you think about when Mikel Arteta took over Arsenal, it was a bit of a fractured picture, really. And the reason why Arsenal are firing as they are is I think that puzzle was kind of being put together, and most of the pieces are now in place to enable Arsenal to be more competitive. So last season, Arsenal really lacked goals from the forward line, and this season we've seen Gabriel Jesus come in, and despite him not scoring in a fair few matches in a row now, he started the season really strongly. He's still got 12 goal contributions across the season already. Bukayo Saka has scored goals, Gabriel Martinelli has scored goals, and Granit Xhaka has scored goals. So, Arsenal are getting goals from a lot of areas on the pitch, which is a bit of a problem. One of the other big problems last season was the fact that when Arsenal lost a game, it tended to start a bit of a snowball effect where they would then lose 2 and 3 and potentially even 4 on the bounce. And this season, when they've dropped points, as they did to Manchester United, they went on another winning run. When they dropped points to Southampton, we've responded with a big 5-0 win over Nottingham Forest. So we're starting to see Arsenal really change from a character standpoint, I think, around how they react to bad results. And then lastly, I think obviously there's been further recruitment. We've also moved on some significant characters. You've actually taken on one of those significant characters in Aubameyang, of course, when we moved him on. We've been able to be, I think Mohamed El Neni actually spoke about this after the game on Thursday. He said that there's no big egos in the group anymore, and it's a very humble group that are all kind of singing off the same hymn sheet. So yeah, it's a fractured puzzle that's been brought together and is pretty much nearly, I'd say, complete at this point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think from a Chelsea perspective, that's kind of where we're at now, that we have a lot of players that have been brought in under a slew of different managers, from Antonio Conte to Maurizio Sarri, Frank Lampard, Thomas Tuchel now, and then finally Graham Potter. What did you make? I'm curious about the whole Aubameyang situation. Were you surprised to see him move to Chelsea? Because we haven't had any disciplinary issues so far that I'm aware of.
Yeah, neither did we at the start. So, there's still a way to go. I would be surprised, if there was issues again, but there was issues at Arsenal. There was issues at Dortmund before he left Dortmund for Arsenal. And it kind of tends to happen toward the end, I suppose, of his time at a club, which makes sense. What did I make of the move? I wasn't necessarily surprised. When he joined Barcelona, they needed a forwards. And then in the summer, they brought in Robert Lewandowski. They renewed Ousmane Dembele's contract. They weren't able to move on Memphis Depay. And so all of a sudden, you got Ferran Torres there, of course, as well. Ansu Fati came back from fitness and he's been returning as well. So Aubameyang's place in that squad wasn't going to give him the regularity of minutes. I think in the first 3 games of the season, he came off the bench once. And so obviously you're in a situation with Chelsea where they needed a striker, or you needed a striker. And so a player of that kind of level that can bring you goals, and we know his quality when he's given the ball in the box, he's lethal. So it made sense that potentially you would go in for a player like him. And, I think it was an absolute risk. There's no doubt in my mind that it was a risk to do that. But obviously, he scored on his Premier League debut. I think he scored on his Champions League return as well with Chelsea's. Was it against Zagreb? I think he potentially scored in the away game off the top of my head.
Absolutely terrible at remembering these things. Like, we have quizzes on Chelsea TV, and I think I got like one question right because I see it and then I just don't remember. I have a great memory for birthdays. But for remembering score lines and scores,
I'm just looking now, and he
terrible.
scored in the Champions League against AC Milan in both games. So he started the first 2 Champions League games against Zagreb and Salzburg, and then scored in both games against Milan. So, 2 goals in the Champions League there as well. But then I think it's been a few games now since the goal. He hasn't scored in the league since the Palace game. He hasn't scored in the last 2 Champions League games despite starting both of those. He did get an assist against Zagreb. Whether or not he's able to replicate some of the goal scoring form he showed at Barcelona, because that was a system that was really tailored to creating chances for the striker, at Chelsea is difficult. If I was Graham Potter, I would be putting a lot more stock in, say, Armando Broja and bringing him through more and giving him more opportunities, because I think there's much more to come from him as a forward than there is, say, from investing more time in Aubameyang. But maybe against Arsenal, he'll have our number, and that's why he'll start.
I feel like he will start versus Arsenal, and I'm very curious to see how that dynamic goes. And I think one of the reasons why he hasn't been scoring so much, I'm kind of thinking about when's the last time he scored and when Reece James got injured. And without Reece James on the pitch, I think that the opportunities and the way that Chelsea have lined up have just kind of been, we're trying to plug holes. But we can talk about that a little bit further once we get into the formation and all of that. So looking at team news ahead of this game, I read that Saka was a doubt. Has he trained? What's the rest of the team news? Do you have any major injuries for anybody who's not super caught up on Arsenal? What are you expecting?
Yeah, so on Bukayo Saka, he is back. He played in the game on Thursday against FC Zurich, came off the bench for the last 15 or so minutes. Didn't do much because I think it was just kind of a case of, giving opportunity to get some minutes into his legs. Mohamed El Neni has returned as well. He started the game on Thursday, so he's back. I don't think he'll play, especially from the start. He could come off the bench in a kind of if Arsenal are, say, leading towards the end and they want to add another midfielder, he potentially is one of those players that would come back. Emile Smith-Rowe is the main kind of out for Arsenal, along with Takahiro Tomiyasu as well, who got injured at the end of the game against Zurich. Looked like it was a muscular injury. Could even rule him out of the World Cup for Japan. So that's a real big blow for him, which he would have probably started the game at left back because he did so well against Mohamed Salah and Darwin Nunez playing left back when we played Liverpool. So it means that Kieran Tierney will come in, which is not a bad thing in any way. He had a brilliant game on Thursday. He scored the only goal of the game and defensively looked solid and looks really determined to kind of make that left back spot his own. But he's still not guaranteed because also coming back into the team is Alexander Zinchenko. He returned to training this week. He was in the squads on Thursday, probably would have come on if it wasn't for Tomiyasu's injury. I would be surprised if he started against Chelsea. However, Arteta has thrown him back in straight away at times, so because he's so important to the way that Arsenal play on the left-hand side. So he could come back into the team. But other than that, everyone else is available. So it's only Smith-Rowe and Tomiyasu that aren't there, which I think comparatively to Chelsea, our injury worries are nowhere near as bad as yours.
Yeah, just to recap, to give a full perspective for Chelsea's injuries, we have Kepa out injured, and that's quite an interesting one because I think under Graham Potter, he is going to perhaps be the starting goalkeeper. At least it was looking like that.
How weird things change so quickly, like coming
Yeah,
full
yeah,
circle.
yeah. It was so I personally didn't think that he was going to get back into the side because I just feel like goalkeeper is one of those positions that it's really difficult to change and even to get a run in the side. And so I'm really happy for him that he's kind of put his head down, but it's definitely pretty crazy to see that change. Reece James is out injured. Ben Chilwell is out injured. Koulibaly just came back from injury. I think Kovacic had a niggle, but he should be back. I'm trying to think. I feel like there were Fofana's out as well.
Yeah, of course.
I think
Is
that's
Kante
it.
out as well, I think.
Oh, Conte, yeah, but he's been out. Yeah,
For
I
a while,
haven't.
yeah.
He's been out since the Spurs game on August 14th. The only reason I know that is because it was my husband's birthday.
Okay.
But it's also a good date to know that N'Golo Kante's been out.
Celebrate his birthday. Go, no, Kante's out. Like
Yeah, that's basically how it went
Yeah.
down. And yeah, I honestly didn't even think about it because he's been out for 3 months already, but absolutely N'Golo Kante is out as well. So some pretty big names, because I think all Chelsea fans will tell you when Reece James and N'Golo Kante especially are in the team, we look like a completely different side. Looking at the match ahead, who do you think is the most important player for Arsenal? And like, who do you think is maybe the most important player or the player that you're most scared of facing against Chelsea, if any, at this point?
Yeah, no, there definitely still are real threats in that Chelsea team. I like Cucurella a lot. I liked when Chelsea went out and signed him. It was always a bit of a question in my mind how that would work with Chilwell being there, but I liked him as a player. It also meant that Man City didn't get him, which is always a good thing when you stop them from signing a player. The one is obviously Aubameyang, because there's just so much motivation for him, behind this one to score against Arsenal, to score against Mikel Arteta's team. And Sterling as well has got a really good record of scoring goals against Arsenal when he was at Man City. So from a Chelsea perspective, they're kind of the main players I'd be looking at that could be a problem. From Arsenal side of things, I think Gabriel Martinelli is the main one. Obviously scored that infamous goal from running all the length of the pitch and scoring in that 2-2 draw, which probably leaves some Chelsea fans with a few nightmares of N'Golo Kante falling over in that game. But I think the main thing... Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say a rare mistake from Kante.
Yeah, it was a rare mistake. It was. But I think, he was 18, 19 years of age when he did that. It kind of announced him a bit more in the Premier League level when he managed that. So the reason why I think it's clear in this game that he'll be a problem is because he's going to be going up against most likely Cesar Azpilicueta, who isn't the most mobile as he was. And I think that Martinelli in behind with support from a very informed Granit Xhaka, who's been brilliant at providing passes out to the wide areas and through the middle and getting into the box himself. Those two players are the two to watch. I think the area in which Chelsea will most likely get joy is down Arsenal's left. Kieran Tierney does like to go forwards, and so that will leave space in behind, and a lot of teams have used that to their advantage. Even if it was Zinchenko, the same thing happens. Tomiyasu has come in, and unfortunately he was probably injured. That really locked down more so the left-hand side, and so it made it much more difficult because Arsenal were playing effectively with 4 centre-halves, because it was White, Saliba, Gabriel and Tomiyasu, who all play and have played all together at some point in the middle for either club country or elsewhere. So yeah, I think the left-hand side for Arsenal is where Chelsea will get the most joy. I imagine that's probably where Mount will be playing on that right-hand side. So with Sterling on the left and Aubameyang through the middle, unless, of course, he decides to go with that wing-back system of Sterling and Pulisic again. But I didn't particularly think that worked amazingly well other than the Salzburg game, did it?
Me neither. And I actually made a TikTok video about this, and it was one of the only videos that actually got views on TikTok. Basically saying, I don't know how to work that app. I feel too old.
Don't have it. No, I can't help you there.
I'm 28, but I still feel like I'm too old to figure out how to use it at this point. But basically what I felt when we play Raheem Sterling and Christian Pulisic as wingbacks is just that they are not able to go forward as much because they have to worry about the defensive side as well. And then when it comes to defending, they just don't have that natural defensive awareness that somebody like Reece James or Ben Chilwell is going to have. And you have to be extremely quick. They both are quick players, but I think it's a very difficult role. It involves a lot of running. And when you have never been deployed in that role before, especially defensively, it's just kind of pulling out maybe more of the weaknesses in both of their games than their strengths. And I think that they're both really good going forward, playing a bit wider, cutting in, and we weren't able to see that. So I do expect Chelsea to play in a back four. There are a lot of gaps now to be filled, but perhaps we could go through and kind of predict our starting 11s and then maybe make a combined starting 11 at this point. So you kind of mentioned a bit who you think is going to start for Arsenal, but let's just go through it again, and then I'll go through the one for Chelsea.
Yeah, sure. So in goal, I think Aaron Ramsdale is the obvious pick. Matt Turner, despite being most likely out as well, one I didn't mention potentially could be out. He's had a tight groin situation, so he's probably going to be out again still. World Cup problems maybe for him with America as well. Then you'd imagine it would be White, Saliba, Gabriel and Tierney to start a left back. There is a small chance Zinchenko could start there, but I think it will be Tierney. Then in midfield, you've got Thomas Partey playing at the base of the three, Xhaka on the left, Odegaard on the right, and then the front three, of course, are Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Jesus, and Gabriel Martinelli.
Awesome. For Chelsea, I think it's going to be a bit more complicated. Let's see. I always try to predict them, and Graham Potter always surprises me or plays a completely different formation than the one that I have pictured in my mind. Edouard Mendy 100% will be in goal because Kepa is out injured. I think that Aspie will start at right back, even though he started versus the Champions League. In the Champions League versus Dinamo Zagreb, but I don't see any other option. Potentially, he's played Ruben Loftus-Cheek there sometimes, but I do think Aspie's going to start a back two, probably of Thiago Silva and Koulibaly, although perhaps Chalobah has been very good for Chelsea, so maybe it would be Thiago Silva and Chalobah. And I think Cucurella comes in at left back. Midfield two, this is an interesting one as well. Zakaria made his debut versus Dinamo Zagreb. He had a very good game. Chelsea have been missing that defensive presence, but do we just throw him into a Premier League game versus Arsenal? I'm not sure. I think, I don't know.
I think it will be Kovacic and Jorginho. I think that's who it will probably
be. For a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting, but I think I'm going to go for Jorginho, Kovacic, Mason, and then Sterling, Aubameyang, Havertz.
Okay. So would that be Aubameyang playing off the left and Havertz through the middle, or would it be Havertz through the middle on the right-hand side, Aubameyang through the middle and Sterling on the left?
I think they tend to interchange a bit, but I think that we're going to see Sterling, Aubameyang, Havertz, but they tend to be a bit fluid, and maybe if something isn't working, then switch it up. But I think Sterling was developing like a very good relationship with Mason Mount as well. So potentially that could be useful, but I am not feeling so confident going into this game. I'm not going to lie. You guys look incredibly strong. I was going to ask a different question. Sorry, still waking up. Let's do our combined 11 first.
Yeah.
So in goal, who you got?
Well, with the thing is, last season I would have said, Mendy. But with Kepa now ousting Mendy, it's a little bit chaotic in that position. So Ramsdale, I think, has been good. I think he's surprised everybody since signing from Sheffield United. I don't think anyone really expected him to have the rise that he has. So, I do stick with him. But if you were asking me this question same time last year, I probably would have said Mendy. But I'll go with Ramsdale in this case.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, because Chelsea, we don't know essentially who the starting goalkeeper is, which is something I never thought I'd say. So have to give it to Ramsdale in this one. I guess we'll play a 4-3-3 ish,
Yeah.
some sort of formation like that.
Which I think is going to help Arsenal's cause a lot.
Yeah, probably. But since Chelsea don't have a set formation, I really don't have any defensive power right now. We're changing it every game. I read that Graham Potter has played 5 or 6 different formations in 10 or 11 games, which is pretty mad. So right back, I would typically have said Reece James if he were fit, because I think he's one of the best right backs in the world.
Yeah.
Not being so biased, I hope. I actually do think that. But at this point, I'm Aspie's biggest fan ever, actually. But I can't. What about you?
Yeah, White has been unbelievably good. Like he's been playing what many would describe as out of position at right back, but he's just been excellent. Like he defensively, his dribbled pass stats are some of the best in the league. Like players just aren't getting past him. He's even improving himself offensively. He got the assist against Southampton for Xhaka's goal. He's getting forwards a lot more. It was his cross that led to the goal on Thursday as well against Zurich. So even though he's a centre-back by trade, he's now developing as a right-back and done brilliantly. I would be shocked if he's not on the plane to Qatar with England, especially with Reece James's situation. That obviously would really help him. If we were doing a wing-back situation, James absolutely would go there. With it being a back four and it being between Azpilicueta and White, I think it has to be White. Just because of consistency and a performance level across the season has been higher. So, yeah.
But if it was a back four with Reece James, if he was fit, would you pick Reece James?
It's interesting again because as a back four, I think James is far better in that wing back role. So if it was a back four, I think it would still be close between the two. I probably might edge it towards James because just as a creative force, he's so good. But as a defensive force, there's no doubt that White is much stronger than him. So it's an interesting balance. So I think it would be touch and go between the two if it was a back four. If it was a back five in a wing back, James all day long, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, he has a wicked right foot. What about the centre backs?
I think centre back wise, William Saliba has to be there because he's just been probably the best centre half in the country. But yeah, you're looking at, you're going to have to find a tough competitor for him. Gabriel, I think, is ousted by Thiago Silva in this sense. Thiago Silva has been so good. Like, despite his age, he is, he's redefining how old a player in the Premier League in that position, I think, can play. There is a tactical thing of when he plays in a back two, is he more exposed? And if he plays in the middle of a back three, he's obviously given a lot more protection from the lack of, mobility that he has. But I think for the benefit of doing player versus player, he has to go ahead of Gabriel, who has made some mistakes this season. And I think so it goes to Saliba and Thiago Silva for me as the back two.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And I can't believe that he's 38. That's
mad.
Just insane.
Mad, isn't it?
When we signed him, I was like, I don't know what he's going to do. He's like 35. He's already getting up there. And he's just been one of our best players consistently week in, week out. And we're playing him a lot more than we should because we have so many injuries and he's putting in these 10 out of 10 performances. Did make a couple of mistakes versus Brighton, very unlike him. But for the most part, I think he's been brilliant. So left back, also an interesting spot. We kind of have Chilwell, who is out injured. So I think Cucurella is going to come in. And you mentioned Zinchenko or Tierney. So where do you see that one going?
Yeah, if Tomiyasu was fit, I think that he's, especially what he's shown this season with the performances against Liverpool, of how good he was in that game. Zinchenko, I can't necessarily pick because, again, fitness-wise, he's not yet back, although was great in the North London derby, which was his last game. Tierney against Cucurella, I really like Cucurella. I would have loved to have seen Arsenal potentially go for someone like him. I think I will lean it towards him because of the chaos at left back for Arsenal. Cucurella has been a mainstay in that position throughout this season, whereas Arsenal's left back role has been very up and down. So I think in fairness, I think it would be unfair not to put Cucurella in that role.
That makes sense. And he's played as left center back, left wing back, and I don't know if you're aware, he was actually in the hospital for a bit, and he lost, I think, 5 kilos. I'm not sure if it was 5 kilos or 5 pounds.
He was already tiny before that.
Yeah. So we've seen his performances dip slightly since the start of the season, but I honestly can't blame him with all of that going on.
No,
To
I
be
really like
honest.
him as a player. I think he's great. You
Yeah.
know, yeah.
Oh, I was super chuffed when we signed him. I couldn't believe it. Especially because I was convinced he was going to City.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, what a player for City. Damn. And then we got him. So looking at the middle of the pitch, Xhaka, Odegaard, Kovacic, Jorginho, Partey, Mason Mount.
Yeah, I guess so. So I guess it's Kovacic, Jorginho, and Mount against Partey, Xhaka, and Odegaard. Partey, for me, is the best player in the league in his position. In that deep midfield role, I think he goes up against Fabinho. I think he's been better than Fabinho this season. The only other player in the conversation for me is Rodri at Man City. And I think, honestly, when he's been playing on his top game, he's been better than Rodri this season. So for me, Partey has to be in there because he's just world-class level footballer. And I don't think he's played against Chelsea that much because I think he's always been injured or out of most of the games. So I remember El Neni came in at Stamford Bridge last season. So I'm not sure if I think Partey may have started that game alongside El Neni, but I know he has missed games because he missed the home game at the start of the season because he ironically got injured against Chelsea in the pre-season game at the start of last season. So he missed the Chelsea home game.
Don't remind me of that game.
But yeah, so he has to be in there for me. Xhaka, again, has to be in there because he's been unreal this year. Like he's scored, I think he's on 4 goals. He's got 3 assists as well. He's a fantasy dream if you ever had him from the start of the season because of differential reasons. He would have been brilliant for your team. Yeah, I didn't either, but my colleague Simon Collins at the Evening Standard did have him, although I think he may have taken him out rather frustratingly and then he scored again. So, yeah, I think it has to be Xhaka. I think that, Kovacic is probably your best midfielder in my view. I like him a lot. I think he's underrated. Jorginho is a very good midfielder. And I think, again, potentially underrated. And I was unlucky, I thought, not to win the Ballon d'Or those years ago when he won, 2021, I guess, when he won the Euros and won the Champions League. Was certainly up there with potentially winning it because of what he'd won on a club basis, but and an international level as well. But I think for this season, in this moment, the stronger pairing is Partey and Xhaka. The question mark is around Odegaard and Mount. That's the conversation.
I feel like it has to be. I don't know. I feel like it has to be Mason. He's so good. He's so good, and he's so integral for us and how he plays. And I think a lot of what he does goes unnoticed because last season he did score a lot of goals for us, 10 goals, 11 assists in the league. I think the first player since Eden Hazard to get double digits for us. But I just think like the work that he does off of the ball as well and just making life easier for other players goes unnoticed a lot. But what do you think? I don't know.
Well, those, if anyone's watching from my channel that's hopped over, because obviously I would have shared the video, will know that Odegaard is one of my favourite players. He's on the back of my away shirt this season because and if anyone's seen the Arsenal away kit, every Premier League club should be jealous of it because it is just insanely nice. So you have to put a good player on the back of it, and Odegaard is there. He has more goals. In fact, he has double the amount of goals as Mount has got in the Premier League this season. He has the same amount of assists as Mount has got this season, 4 goals, 2 assists in the league compared to Mount's 2 goals, 2 assists. However, Mount does have 4 assists in the Champions League, whereas Odegaard hasn't got any goal contributions in the Europa League, although he's not really played in the Europa League because he's been rotated out. So it's tough. I think it's a toss-up. I really do think it's split. It's difficult. I really like Mason Mount, and as an Arsenal fan, I don't tend to like Chelsea players, but Cucurella and Mount are the 2 that I look to that I like. Makes it easier when supporting England, of course, that I do get to enjoy Mount a bit more. I would be going against all my instincts to pick him over Odegaard, but I think we can call this one maybe a split decision.
Okay, I'm gonna put it in. I'm taking notes here, so I'm gonna put it in as a split decision, and that's kind of how I feel with Kovacic. Like I don't know where to fit him in, but he's just one of our best players. So,
again, if we were talking about the start of last season, I think Kovacic would go in over Xhaka, but this season, Xhaka just is unbelievably good. So, it's a
Yeah,
tough
that's
one.
the thing.
Yeah.
Kovacic was injured for a bit. He's starting to come back now. He
Mm.
tends to have a niggle here or there. This is so hard, but everybody's going to absolutely roast me for how Arsenal heavy it is. But you guys are first in the league, so
Yeah.
I really can't do much talking. So finally, the front three, it's Martinelli, Gabriel Jesus, and Saka versus Raheem Sterling, Aubameyang, and Kai Havertz.
Yeah. For me, it's an Arsenal front three. I am biased. I am an Arsenal fan. Of course, I would say that. But behind Man City's Haaland, Foden, and, well, whoever plays on the right-hand side for them, if they choose Foden or Grealish could play left, I think that the Arsenal front three has just been so good. Yes, Jesus hasn't scored in, I think, now 8 games, but he's still got 12 goal contributions across all competitions still, with 5 goals and 7 assists. I think that is in the Premier League. Yeah. So it's so tough. It's so tough to think who of the front three, because I think Martinelli and Saka have to be there.
Yeah,
and the question mark is if any of that front three of Sterling, who can play in the middle, Aubameyang can play in the middle, Havertz can play in the middle. If any of them go over Jesus, I'm not sure that they do. But I think the only argument is Havertz is the only one.
The thing with Havertz, I'm just looking up his stats now. He has 1 goal in the Champions League, 3 goals in the Premier League. I will say he's looked better the past couple of games, but he tends to have a very lax style of play, and sometimes he can get a bit bullied, but I still do think there's a very special player in there, but he's just not been super, super consistent. But I don't know. I feel like surely one of Chelsea's front three, Raheem Sterling maybe, but he started off the season very strong under Thomas Tuchel. Graham Potter came in. He started deploying him as wingback, so he wasn't doing so much. But we saw him score. I think it was versus Dinamo Zagreb, if my brain isn't messing it up, and he got a much-needed goal. But I don't know. I
think one of the best ways to kind of do these, and it may even work with the Mount Odegaard thing and the Kovacic Xhaka thing, is you go, would you swap Sterling for Martinelli if I gave you the chance?
Would I swap him? I don't know. Maybe.
And then the question is, would you swap on the right-hand side, I suppose, it would be Havertz with Aubameyang in the middle. Would you swap Saka for Havertz?
Saka for Havertz? Oh, gosh.
You see what I mean?
Like Saka as a player, but I really like Kai Havertz as well.
Yeah. And then you got to ask, would you swap Aubameyang for Jesus? And if the answer to any of those is like that you would, I think they go in. Like for me, I'm not swapping any of the Arsenal front three because they're just, I just think they're slightly clear, in some cases significantly clear, I think on the right-hand side in particular. So yeah, I came into this when everyone says like combined 11 is that you come across so biased because obviously it's your team.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to be as measured as possible with it. Yeah.
You are one of the most measured people that I've had on my channel, I must say.
Yeah.
That's a thing. I feel like Chelsea just haven't been so consistent this season. And obviously there's been a lot of change in the team with Thomas Tuchel leaving and change in formation, and then our entire backline essentially being injured and trying to figure that out. I think you probably give it to Jesus, but I would also just low-key love to throw Aubameyang in there for the chaos
for because the banter,
yeah. Because I think with Aubameyang, the thing at least that I noticed for Chelsea is that he might not be so involved in the game, but then he's capable of pulling out this moment of brilliance because he knows where the goal is and he knows exactly what he needs to do to score. And he just has that natural striker's ability that Chelsea have kind of been lacking. So maybe if he's not so involved, but he'll still get a goal. So yeah, guys, I'm so sorry for anybody who's a Chelsea fan watching. We have Ramsdale, White, Saliba, Thiago Silva, Cucurella, Partey, Xhaka, Mount / Odegaard. We couldn't pick between the two, Martinelli, Saka, and probably Jesus over Aubameyang. But let us know in the comments what your combined 11 is. This was way harder than I thought it was going to be. Tom, I had a kind of fun game to play with you.
Okay.
There's a lot of players that have played for both Chelsea and Arsenal. So I wanted to see maybe how many we could name in, I don't know, 30 seconds, something like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. Are
These players that have to make a senior appearance? Like, we're not talking like Eddie Nketiah, who left Chelsea at 14 or whatever it was to join us.
Let's say senior appearance.
Okay.
Otherwise it's going to be
Way too
mad.
hard.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to put a stopwatch on.
Okay.
I don't know if I'll be able to type as fast as you're talking, but I'll give it a go. Okay, ready, set, go.
Lassana Diarra, Ashley Cole, Olivier Giroud, Aubameyang, Petr Cech, David Luiz. Who else? Fabregas, yes, of course. There must be more. Do you count William Gallas, Willian? Yeah. Anyone else off the top of my head? Anelka, great shout. Going back, if you're going back that far.
We're at time.
We're out of time. How many did we get?
We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't think that's any bad. That's very fair. So, guys, let us know in the chat if there's any that we missed. I'm sure that there's someone, but I can't think of anybody off of the top of my head.
I mean, Lassana Diarra came into my head first. That's weird in itself. Yeah. So, yeah, but I'm sure there's definitely more that have played for both. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, the business that we have between the two clubs being such rivals. So just to wrap it up, I said that it was going to be quick, and I've just absolutely loved our conversation, and we've been chatting along for over half an hour now. Where do you think this game is going to be won and lost?
I think that, as I mentioned earlier, Gabriel Martinelli on the left-hand side, Chelsea's right, Arsenal's left. I think this is the key area of the game. If Chelsea are able to prevent that, either by going to a back three and putting Chalobah and Thiago Silva and Azpilicueta all to try and restrict it, that could be an option. I think that from a midfield standpoint, if you stop Thomas Partey playing, you stop a lot of what Arsenal can do. The only team that have been able to do that this season so far have been Leeds, and we still managed to win that just 1-0. So that's a big thing. I think the midfield battle is going to be key. That might be why Potter goes to a midfield three to match up Arsenal's midfield three in case he does go to a midfield two with a back three that could overrun the midfield for Arsenal's benefit. So they're the two key areas I see this one. But ultimately, it'll be won and lost in the two penalty boxes. So we'll see.
Very, very true. And Chelsea fans, let's see how we line up tomorrow. It's been a bit of a mixed bag. I do think that we're probably going to go for a back four. I don't see us playing with wingbacks, and we just have so many players out. Maybe we see Zakaria come into the mix after having a good game versus Dinamo Zagreb, bring some defensive presence. We will see. I don't know if I would necessarily throw him in, but an interesting shot as well. So to wrap things up, Tom, what is your score prediction for this match?
I'm going to go for a 2-1 Arsenal win. I think we might go 1-up and then get pegged back to 1-1, and then maybe another penalty at the bridge for Saka to score. So, yeah, I'm going to go a 2-1 Arsenal win in this one. What about you?
I have to say, Saka has such a cool presence about him. He's so young, but just for him to step up and take penalties, I think it was versus Liverpool? I don't remember that.
Yes, it was. He scored one against Liverpool. He scored one against Chelsea last season as well, of course, at Stamford Bridge. So,
and just all of that pressure, especially in the Liverpool games, all of the fans screaming at him and whistling, and he did really cool to keep his calm. I'm gonna go for like a 1-1, or maybe it will be super chaotic and be like a 2-2. I hope that Chelsea win, of course, since I'm a Chelsea fan. but Arsenal have just one loss, I believe, this season. They're flying high, and we've been a bit inconsistent, but never say never, especially in a London derby. So who knows? But Tom, thank you so much for joining me on the channel. It was super lovely to get to meet you, and yeah, let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, well, if Chelsea fans, you want some Arsenal content, you can check us out at the Gooner Talk. But to be fair, I work at football.london, so there's lots of Chelsea stuff over there with the likes of Dan Childs and Bobby Vincent, of course, who produce a lot of the Chelsea content, a lot with others as well. So you can read all about the game and the fallout from it over there with our Chelsea writers as well.
Amazing. So I'll make sure to put all of that in the description box. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this Chelsea vs Arsenal match preview. If you liked it, make sure to definitely follow Tom on socials and maybe subscribe to me as well while you're at it. Hope you guys have a great rest of the day or evening, whatever time you're watching this. And until next time, I'm out. Bye.